Alright everyone, this is a special video here, an extra video today, talking about California's Senate Bill 9 and its zoning ordinance nonsense, because what it will do is actually eliminate the suburbs in California. Not completely, but it'll take chunks out of them, and it's actually being praised by some people. Supposedly it's set up to provide affordable housing for people in California. The problem is that California doesn't have a housing crisis at this point because, of course, people are moving out of California quicker than they're being born or moving in. California has actually lost an electoral point, I think, in the last election because of this, because people are moving to other places they're moving to greener pastures. Now, here's the thing. Senate Bill 9 being considered in California, what it does is it eliminates the ability of localities, of townships and villages and stuff, suburban zones, to actually earmark property areas as being single family only. So right now what you have is a situation where you're the mayor of a city, there's an area to be developed, and you say, okay, only single family homes can go up in this area. That's all it's earmarked for. Suburban homes, middle class homes. This robs the localities of the ability to actually police what is developed there, which, by the way, I don't even know that this is a leftist sort of thing. This is more of a money-making grab sort of thing. And it gives it to the state, where the state can come in and say, no, yeah, you can mark it as single family only, but no, it's going to be medium density. Here's the problem. What will happen is this, and I've thought it out. And this is why I'm making the video tonight, because I was like, well, this is a real bright idea. For all of you out there who are multi-millionaires, other than donating some of that Doge to me, you can probably think of getting a 0% interest loan and going into California. By the way, this is not official investment advice, by the way, disclaimer there, and making quite a return. What this would allow to happen is, let's say that I'm a developer, lower end. I'm not BlackRock or anything. I got a few $1 million. Only a few million, a few paltry million. I can go into a suburban zone and leaflet it and say, hey, you want to get like 120% of your home value? Well, just respond to this ad, send me an email, send me a phone call. If I can find 2 or 3 properties next to each other, I buy the properties. Okay, I've taken a loss. I've given them more than their properties are technically worth at market. So they've made out fairly well, and they go off and probably to another state, or at least to a smaller community on the outskirts of the state. I've got these properties. Now I have to pay to bulldoze things and make the property all kosher. Now I can build medium density housing, and if you know anything about medium density housing, it's very prefab, it's almost like building Legos at this point. Cheap material, very prefabricated. And so now, instead of having, let's say, 3 suburban lots next to each other with eighth of an acre lots or something, now all of a sudden there are 9 floor level units, 9 units above that on the second floor and 9 above that on the third floor. It's not high density, it's only 3 stories tall. It's medium density. This is something that the liberals, by the way, are applauding right now, the idea of medium density being more efficient. As far as making money, I absolutely agree. So now, all of a sudden, I've massively multiplied the amount of properties I can sell. I don't have to sell them for the same amount that the suburban lots would sell. Let's say one of those was worth 300 grand. That would be a reasonable estimate for a lot of parts of California. So I spend 900 grand getting them. But now I've got 9 times as many properties. I don't have to sell them for 300 grand. I can sell them for considerably less than that, and they'll be bought, because there's this housing crisis. Now, that's sort of imaginary, but there are people that will buy that because they'll say, hey, if I sell my $350,000 suburban lot, and I move into one of these lots for 120, 130 or something, shit, I made a huge amount of money. I still got a nice little place. I still got a couple bedrooms, and it's all right. And then I've got this money. I can pay for the kids' college fund. I can buy my midlife crisis car or whatever. What will happen is this as a result. Once that development is made, in fact, before it's made, as soon as the construction begins, the property values of all adjacent properties will drop. Everything within a block or two their property values drop. Now keep in mind, these roads were built for suburban traffic. They weren't built for medium density. They're a couple of lanes with a sidewalk, usually. They weren't built for the kind of density that will come to them once there are 9 times as many people living there. The problem is that what you're going to do is you're going to have little dots here and there in the suburbs, the single-family home zones, of medium density housing, lowering the property values, which lowers the tax income potentially. Overtaxed infrastructure, which makes absolutely no sense. Even the fucking electric and water lines will have to be upgraded. And you've also potentially, and I'm not a defender of the suburbs, I'm not a huge fan of suburban living. A lot of suburbanites are NIMBYists. They want another addiction treatment facility, but not in their neighborhood. And so in one way, this has kind of comeuppance for them because of their NIMBYism. That part I appreciate. The problem is that it's all screwy and it really doesn't make long-term sense. You're going to have little chunks of medium density housing sold and or rented within suburban communities with infrastructure that wasn't built for that purpose. It makes no sense. And by the way, I would point out, do you think this is going to affect the rich? No. No developer is going to say, hey, these 10 plus acre lots up here on this hill overlooking LA, yeah, they're worth 15, 20 million. They look really nice, but if I took that 10 acres, I bet I could put a bunch of row houses up there. They're not going to do that. It's not going to affect the super wealthy. Hell, it'll barely affect the upper middle class. What this will affect is middle class suburbanites. Lower middle class individuals, pensioners and shit like that. They're going to be screwed. If they're lucky, then they get out as soon as the fighting begins and they say, well, you know, BlackRock's offering me 130%. I might as well get out while the getting's good. If they're intelligent, then they will, because California won't protect them. And so this is a terrible idea. And Scott Adams actually was applauding this earlier as a step in the right direction for a housing crisis. What housing crisis? In the state of California, I mean. May I ask you, what crisis actually exists? The crisis is that the houses are too expensive. They're not expensive because of shortages. All sorts of people have moved out of California. There are probably several 100,000 derelict properties alone in the state of California. It's not for a lack of properties. It's because the state government is dysfunctional. This is just another step in its dysfunction. Link in the description, archived of course, to a brief write-up about this. It's not going to affect the gated communities. It's not going to affect the rich. It will affect the working and middle classes only. It will rip them apart, and what people will be forced to do is that they'll have to make a choice. Do I move further out? I pay a little bit more, but you know, I'm beyond the developer's scope probably. That's the hope at least, although it'll probably affect them eventually too. Or do I move to the inner city and or to the medium density, and I can make a return. I make a bit of money. I sold my suburban lot at 300. I bought this medium density at 150. I get this differential. That's nice, I suppose. Or do they leave the state? Do they go to greener pastures? Well, the problem is Californians have already been doing that for a number of years. They've already been fleeing the state. I can't think of anything that would make them flee faster than saying to all of the single-family homeowners, hey, you're not allowed to actually live in a zone where you voluntarily moved in part knowing that this was a single-family zone. You didn't have to worry about an apartment building springing up next door. You didn't have to worry about a gas station being down the road. Everything was meticulously zoned. You moved in with the understanding, with the voluntary association, very libertarian concept, that you were around other single-family homes. It's not the most efficient. It's certainly, you know, with housing authorities especially, and rife in California, it's not the most pretty. You know, you have to have the monocultured, you know, stupid-ass lawn. You can't grow the front yard garden and shit like that. And that part of the suburbs can go and fucking die for all I care. But you did that voluntarily. You decided that that particular kind of living was what you wanted, and you bought in. Now you're being told you can either escape now while the escaping's good and get, you know, a good payoff and let a developer screw the whole neighborhood, or you can hold out and inevitably end up screwed anyway, because then your property will be worth maybe 80%. Maybe it goes down to 60% of its current value. Well, I mean, that's a tangible asset. That's a primary residence. It's not like the person has 5 homes. The average suburbanite doesn't have multiple homes. That is their home. That's where they chose to locate themselves. Why should they be screwed endlessly by an out-of-control state government would be my question. So yeah, California Senate Bill 9 is a terrible idea. And really, it should be taken before the Supreme Court. The idea that a state has the right to supersede local zoning, I'm not sure would stand up in court, actually. It might, but is it a good idea? No, absolutely not. That's about all. Peace out.